How do you brutally murder your own sister? Well, I'm about to tell you right now. We're going to go back to 1996, and we're in the border area of Oklahoma and Texas. And we got two people, a brother and sister, 20-year-old Farrah Armstrong and her older brother, 22-year-old Shad. Now, Shad, at this point, even though he's only 22, he's been to jail and prison multiple times, and he's on parole. One night, Shad gets an idea of a robbery that he wants to commit over in Texas. There's a house that he heard has some stuff that he wants, and he needs a little bit of help, and he enlists the help of his younger sister. Now, there is drugs involved in the story because that is why Shad is going around committing these crimes, so he can get more money to fuel his drug habit. Farrah and Shad getting into trouble, committing crimes, but Shad is more the brains and the brawn of this operation. They go to the house across the border into Texas and steal whatever it is that they steal. After the robbery is committed, they do whatever it is that they do with the money. Now, word comes back to police in Texas that Shad and Farrah Armstrong are responsible for this burglary. Now, again, like I said, Shad is on parole, and he knows that if he gets caught, again, violating his parole and getting a new charge, he's likely going to spend the next 25 years to life in prison. So Farrah and Shad, now they have warrants for their arrest, and they got to get out of Dodge. So they get together with Shad's girlfriend, Rusette Medina, who by now has a child with Shad. And maybe somebody knows somebody that lives in Arizona. So all three make tracks over to Arizona, and they eventually settle in the Tucson area. Now, they don't really know what's going on in Arizona. They got to get jobs. So Farrah gets a job. Shad continues his life of crime and smoking meth. Eventually, Farrah would meet a man by the name of Frank Williams. They get together, they hit it off. I believe Frank is a Christian. He's never been arrested as far as I know, and he lives a pretty clean life, and Farrah admires that in him. She's had a rough upbringing, and she's never really known too many people or been close to too many people that lead a straight and narrow lifestyle. So as they date, she falls in love with him, and they move in together in an apartment. Now, Shad, being the loser that he is, doesn't have anywhere to go, so Farrah and Frank allow him and Rusette, his girlfriend, who they call Rusty for short, to move in with them. However, that doesn't work because Rusty and Shad, they're doing drugs, they're not working, they're bums, constantly fighting. Farrah had told Shad, listen, you can stay here, but you can't just stay here for free, so at least pay a cable bill or something. And he's so addicted to drugs and has no money that he can't even pay a cable bill. So finally, Frank and Farrah, they're fed up with these clowns, and they just kick him out. So they get thrown out, and eventually they go to stay in a trailer with a man that Shad had met named David Dugan. So they're living with David Dugan in 3 Points, which is 45 minutes southwest of Tucson. Now, Frank and Farrah, they're setting a date to get married. However, there's a problem. And the problem is that Farrah has trouble with the law. The law wants to talk to her back here in Oklahoma. And Frank says, listen, baby, I love you and all that, but if we're going to, leave your past behind, you have to turn yourself in. You got to clean up your record. You got to just do whatever it is that they tell you to do. We can't be rolling around and I'm worried about you getting pulled over and then they haul you off to jail or what have you. And it's always a better look if you turn yourself into the law and you tell them, hey, I cleaned my act up and I'm no longer the person that I was previous. So Farrah makes a plan. She says, okay, I'm going to come back here to Oklahoma and I'm going to turn myself in and I'm going to do whatever it is that I have to do, whatever jail time, whatever, and then I'm going to leave that life behind me. Now, Farrah made a very bad mistake in coming up with this plan, and that is to tell Rusty what she was going to do. Because let's not forget again, if Shad gets pulled over and arrested and brought back to Oklahoma, he's going to do practically the rest of his life, or at least the rest of his life as he sees it, being a young man behind bars, and he has absolutely no intentions on that happening. So Rusty tells her boyfriend Shad, by now they have 2 children. She says, hey, Farrah told me that she's going to turn herself into Oklahoma, and she said that she's going to turn you in too. If she turns you in, maybe she'll get like preferential treatment. Okay, so my sister's going to turn me in, and I don't want to go back to prison. So he starts panicking, and he comes up with, the only solution that he can think of, and that is to kill Farrah. So he starts setting up a plan with him, David, and Rusty. They're like, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to lure her here to the trailer. I'll come up with her plan and just keep her preoccupied, and I'm just going to kill her. So they start setting their plan into motion. Now, Shad calls his sister and says, hey, I got that money for the cable bill or something, whatever he says, to get her to come over. While he's doing that, they start hanging drop cloths in and around the trailer. That way, when he shoots her, the blood splatter doesn't hit against the wall, right? I guess this guy's watching Cold Case Files or something, so he knows what he's doing over here. So February 18th, 1998, that's when we're going to do it. So Shad tells his sister, hey, come on over. Oh, and bring Frank with you. Yeah, I really want to talk to Frank because David, he has a problem with his car, and I guess Frank was a mechanic. So they make the drive over to their trailer in 3 Points, and as soon as they get in, they sit on the couch, and Shad says, excuse me, I got to go to the restroom really quick. He goes into the next room, grabs a shotgun loaded with deer slug, comes out into the living room, points the shotgun at Frank, and proceeds to blast him right in the chest. Farrah gets up to scream. He points the gun at her, pulls the trigger, shoots her in the chest, and then for a good measure, aims the gun at her head and pulls the trigger. And then does the same to Frank. Now there's blood everywhere. And those drop cloths, boy, they probably didn't work. So they proceed, all 3, to start wrapping, well, all 2, because at this time now, Rusty's in the next trailer because she's keeping the kids preoccupied because she doesn't want them to see that. So David and Shad proceed to start wrapping the bodies up in plastic bags and sheets. So now they're all wrapped up like 2 mummies. They tie the bodies to the back of David's truck, and they drive it on the property. I guess they lived on a few acres out there, and he had already pre-dug a shallow grave. So they drag the bodies to the grave, throw them in there, throw the sheets in there, everything that had blood on there, and then bury it. They then go and they get all the furniture that's caked in blood, and they just drive it out like to the middle, like off the highway in the desert, and just dump it. That's it. And then Shad before they buried the bodies, had taken all of Farrah's jewelry, her engagement ring, all of that, stolen her wallet, took Frank's wallet. Now he has Farrah's debit card. So he goes to an ATM and tries to get out the money on her account. And she's always used this same PIN number her entire life. But this time, however, the PIN number has been changed. You can't get any money out of the ATM. And the ATM machine gets a nice picture of Shad there. Now, eventually, police find the furniture that was dumped out in the desert because they had gotten a call from a neighbor concerned that they hadn't seen Frank and Farrah in quite some time. They were wondering where they were. They just stopped showing up. And the pieces start falling together, and Shad and Rusty with their 2 children, they're on the run. And they would be on the run for almost a year until January of 1999, when they eventually would get caught and arrested. I believe they got caught in Odessa, Texas. Now, Shad, Rusty, and David, now they're all locked up in jail, facing 2 counts of first-degree murder. Now, eventually, they're going through the motions, and in exchange for a more lenient sentence, David would go ahead, along with Rusty, and basically testify against Shad. And the story was, he didn't want to go back to prison, so he decided to shoot and kill his sister. Now, the first trial, he's found guilty as charged, of course. There's a huge amount of evidence. They got blood all over the trailer. They eventually told them where the bodies were, got a search warrant, and dug them up. And now Shad is found guilty by a jury, and then a judge sentences him to death. However, he would win some kind of either an appeal or a retrial because of some legal technicality. I mean, there's always lawyers out there that always try to help these people get off death row. So they say that, a judge in Arizona, because I think this case went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and they said that, a judge isn't legally allowed to determine whether somebody gets life or death. So they got to do the trial all over again. So later on, he would go get another trial, another hearing, something along those lines. And it's the same result. The only way he was going to be able to save his life and not get the death penalty is if they were able to prove that Shad killed his sister not to get any kind of money off of her, but to keep her silent. That was the part about him getting the death penalty, was that his intentions were for monetary gain, like as in this was a robbery. And they, in fact, were robbed. They were robbed of all their possessions. But really, he wanted to take her out so he could, remain a free man, because he didn't want to go back to prison. And also, he didn't like Frank. He didn't like her fiance because he was a goody two-shoes, and, well, he just didn't like him, so he wanted him dead too. Shad Armstrong is currently on death row in Arizona. And this is the final resting place of Farrah Armstrong. Wow. Look at that. Killed one day after your birthday. Jeez Louise. This kid right here, I believe this is Farrah's brother's son who died of cancer. Yeah, what a terrible story. I mean, let me just say this. There's a reason why drugs are illegal. And I'm pretty sure Farrah and Shad had a bad upbringing. I'm pretty sure it wasn't the greatest. None of us really was the greatest. And I mean, this story was fueled by nothing but meth. That's why drugs are illegal, kids, because it creates a psychosis in your brain and it makes you crazy. And you do crazy things like brutally murder your own sister. Rest in peace to both. Okay, guys, Lamont at large, signing out. I'll catch up with you on the next video. Peace out.